Let's listen to The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, Level B1, Oxford Reading University.
Part 1.
1. Before heading to the old family house of Bly in Essex, I had spent 2 stressful days in London. I was going to be a governess of 2 little children. I felt lost again and again. Surely I was making a mistake. But the children's uncle, the man who hired me, was a very pleasant and handsome gentleman. I enjoyed his company very much and really wanted to help him. When I arrived in Bly, all my fears were gone. I remember this house as my most pleasant impression. This fancy building had towers, big windows, and a well-kept garden with beautiful flowers in front of it. I was received by the housekeeper, Mrs. Groves, and a little girl named Flora. She had beautiful golden hair and wore a neat blue dress. I immediately felt happy to be her governess. That night, I lay awake, thinking about Flora. My excitement was too strong. Then I heard strange noises. The crying of a child far away and light footsteps at my door. But it didn't bother me too much. At dinner, I asked Mrs. Groves about Flora's brother Miles. He was coming home from school for a holiday, his uncle told me. Is he as wonderful as his sister? I wondered aloud. Absolutely, she replied. You will get carried away by the young gentleman. To my own surprise, I said, I have already got carried away because of someone in London. Mrs. Groves understood that I was talking about the master. I was a little bit embarrassed. Is the young gentleman coming back tomorrow? I asked. On Friday, miss, said Mrs. Groves. I volunteered to meet him, to Mrs. Groves's great pleasure. I spent the whole following day with Flora. She showed me around the house, step by step, and room by room, and secret by secret. We toured all the rooms, explored the garden, and walked up and down the old stairs. Soon, I felt a warm connection between us. 2. In the evening, we received sad news from school. I hardly slept that night, and in the morning, I felt brave enough to complain to Mrs. Groves. The headmaster wrote that Miles has been rejected from school, I told her. How could that be? She asked, surprised. Tell me, what has he done? There are no specific details, I answered, but it looks like he is a danger to others. Mrs. Groves was obviously annoyed. Miles is a 10-year-old child, she cried out. How can he be dangerous? Maybe he behaves ill, I suggested. Well, naturally, sometimes he does, Mrs. Groves replied. Similarly to other boys of his age. Indeed, I like it when children are a bit naughty, I admitted. But if they are a bad influence... Do you fear that Miles will be a bad influence on you? She asked all of a sudden and laughed. Of course, she was devoted to the children, and her reaction was natural. The next day, I was determined to investigate the occasion further. "Did the previous governess see anything wrong with the boy?" I asked Mrs. Groves. "She never told me," was the reply. "Did she take good care of Miles?" I wondered. "She did, in some ways." I felt that Mrs. Groves was trying to reply honestly, but in some other ways she didn't, I insisted. "Well, she died, miss. With all due respect, we mustn't judge the dead," Mrs. Groves said. "Yes, I understand your emotions," I agreed. "Did she die here?" "No, she went away for a short while, but she never returned." 3. Miles appeared to be as sweet and innocent as his sister. He had very delicate features and big eyes. When I first saw him, I felt that he was mild and gentle and full of love. How could the headmaster write such horrible, unfair things about him? Soon, I fully committed to my duties. I grew more cheerful every day. In the afternoon, the children used to go to bed after class. Those were my leisure hours. I spent them walking in the garden and thinking about the master. Once, as I walked back to the house, I suddenly noticed a figure on the roof. A stranger was standing still and staring at me. I froze in fear. Strangely enough, I noticed that he didn't wear a hat. He turned and walked across the roof without taking his eyes off me for a second. Then he turned away, but it felt like he was still looking at me. I didn't say anything to Mrs. Groves when I came back. I had to think it over properly. What secret was this old house hiding? Eventually, I decided it was just an adventurer who secretly got into an old family house to appreciate the view. I enjoyed my time with Miles and Flora, but sometimes I caught myself thinking, is there something strange about them? They both were so mild and innocent. It was like they lacked life. They were like angels, and there was nothing to punish them for. Miles never talked about school, and he never was upset. How should I express it? He seemed to have no history. If he really had been that bad, I would have noticed, but I didn't see anything. My days were filled with happiness. I was so fond of the children that I couldn't see the truth. 4. On Sunday, as Mrs. Groves and I were on our way to church, I noticed that I had no gloves on. I remembered that I had dropped them in the dining room and returned to pick them up. While I was in the room, I looked out of the window and saw a terrible sight. The man I had seen on the roof was staring at me closely through the glass. We kept our eyes on each other, and I didn't say anything. Then he slowly looked around the room. I realized that he had come for somebody. I ran outside, but the man was gone, and there was no sign of him. I stood in the same spot where he had stood and pressed my face against the glass. At that moment, Mrs. Groves entered the room. She saw me and let out a frightened cry. I went back into the house and explained what had happened. He just looked at me, I said, trying to keep calm. I can't go to church today. I won't leave the children and risk their lives. That horror is walking around outdoors. Horror? Mrs. Groves asked, with doubt in her voice. It could be a local from the neighborhood. What did he look like? Is he a gentleman? No, I answered without thinking. He wasn't wearing a hat. He had a pale face and curly red hair. He also had very strange little eyes, and he stared so closely. Was he attractive? Mrs. Groves asked. What was he wearing? He had a fairly handsome face, I replied. He wore very fashionable clothes, but they were not his own. The master's clothes? Mrs. Groves let out a little scream. I realized that she knew this man. You do know him, I said. For a moment, she was silent. Then she said, It was Peter Quint, the master's servant. He used to steal the master's clothing, but he never took his hat. When the master left, he stayed with us. He was in charge. And what happened to him? I asked. He is dead, Mrs. Groves answered. I was shocked. Now we both knew for sure that I had seen Quint's ghost. You think he is looking for someone? Asked Mrs. Groves. Suddenly, I realized the awful truth. He has come for Miles, I said. He wants to appear in front of him and little Flora. Mrs. Groves was very frightened. Don't be afraid, I encouraged her. Were they good friends? Quint used to bother Miles. He wanted to play with the boy, to spoil him. She was quiet for a while. Then she added, Quint was too free with everyone. I was angry. This evil man could hurt my dear children. Why didn't you tell the master? I asked. He dislikes complaints, Mrs. Groves explained. And I was afraid of what Quint might do. He was so smart. It was obvious to me that Mrs. Groves was hiding something. 5. One hot summer day, I took Flora out for a walk by the lake. Soon, I felt that someone was watching us. Suddenly, Flora stopped playing and turned her back to the lake. Could she feel it too? I thought to myself, and turned my head toward the lake in horror. On the other side was a young woman, watching us carefully. She was pale and looked sick, and she wore black clothing. When we got home, I threw myself into Mrs. Groves's arms, screaming, They know! They are aware! When she released me, I tried to pull myself together. 2 hours ago, by the lake, Flora saw a woman, I explained. She was dressed in black. She stood there and stared at her. She had come for her. I think it was the previous governess. Mrs. Groves was confused. How can you be sure? She asked. I knew it from the way she looked at Flora, I explained. Her eyes were fixed on the girl. She wants to hold her. Mrs. Groves's face turned pale. She was dressed in black, you say? She asked. Yes, and she was of rare beauty, I replied. Indeed, Mrs. Groves said. They both were, but they also were very unpleasant and evil. Were they? I began. She didn't let me finish. Yes, Mr. Quint and Miss Jessel were lovers. Although she was a lady and he was a simple servant, he did what he wanted to do. With her? I asked. With all of them, was her reply. I was quiet for a while. How did she die? I finally asked. I don't know, Mrs. Groves repeated. But she couldn't stay here after what they had been doing together. And what about Miles? I asked. Did he know that Mr. Quint and Miss Jessel were having an affair? I don't know, Mrs. Groves cried. I covered my face with my hands. It is worse than I thought, I said helplessly. We can't do anything for the children. They are lost. 6. The next few days passed peacefully, and I enjoyed my time with the children. It was easy to teach them and to entertain them because they were always in a good mood. But I also kept a closer look at them than before. Maybe they intend to hide something from me, I sometimes thought to myself. One night, I stayed up late reading a book. Flora was already asleep. It was early morning when suddenly I heard strange noises. Someone was in the house, and he was awake. I took a candle and went up the stairs. Suddenly, my candle blew out. I looked around and saw Peter Quint. He was standing at the stairs, looking me straight in the eyes. He appeared more living than dead. I wasn't afraid, but this moment would forever remain a mystery to me. We couldn't talk, so we just stared at each other for a long time. Then he turned his back to me and disappeared at the bottom of the stairs. I returned to the room to find Flora's empty bed. For a moment, I froze in fear, and then I felt something moving behind me. I hurried to the window where Flora stood. "You are being very bad," I said. "Where have you been?" My words upset the little girl. I held her tight in my arms. "Did you think I was out in the garden?" I asked her. "Someone was definitely there," she said, and gave me an innocent smile. "Did you see anybody?" "No," she replied in a determined voice, but I knew she was lying. 7. After that, I was on my guard at night. One day I saw the figure of a woman sitting on the steps and crying silently. Even though I could only see her back, I knew what her frightening face looked like. Before I could do anything, she disappeared.
Stay with us for part 2.
Like and subscribe to support our channel and keep getting new stories. And now check out another awesome audiobook.